Hi, I'm John Messina, and welcome to another edition of Hey Coach. Even though it's football season right now, we're taping the shows and we're getting ready for our basketball season in high school in St. Lucie County. And I got two esteemed coaches. Notice how I said the word esteemed. I got Pat Kelly from Treasure Coast High School.
Good to be with you, John.
And I'm glad you got a little trip coming in here from the West Coast, huh?
Yeah, I got to see all my grandkids and my kids in a whirlwind tour there.
And you flew right back in for the show.
Got back just in time for the show.
I know.
I had to make it.
And John Picchiarini, good friend of mine from Port St. Lucie High School. Notice I said Port St. Lucie.
Yeah,
It
nice
felt good,
thing.
huh?
Yeah, good to see you.
Glad back to being coach, you know. But we're going to talk, we're going to do two shows. First one, we're going to talk about high school sports. Second, we're going to talk about the ever-changing college basketball scene and you know, what basketball is today. I know they opened up in the NBA last night, and you know, kind of watched the game after the Yankee game last night, which I got to throw in.
Right.
You know, but
same here.
Yes, on that. But a little bit about your background, Pat. How did you start, and how did you get into coaching?
Well, I was from Western Pennsylvania, so sports was in our blood.
Yeah.
And I grew up around it. I was motivated by my involvement with my football coach in grade school, Frank Cipriani. He was our hero. And my dad played at Yale, and his brother played at Notre Dame basketball. Wow. So I kind of became a Duquesne fan. I listened to all their games. Willie Somerset and General Olovich was at Pitt, and Cal Sheffield. And so I knew everybody, and I still know those names.
And back then, Duquesne was top,
They
right?
were good, yes.
They were good.
So I ended up playing at Duquesne a little bit, and Red Manning was there at the time. And actually, Norm Nixon, I took him to my first banquet up at Red Bank Valley. Norm and I drove up from Duquesne University. So Western Pennsylvania, I ended up coaching with Tommy Donahoe there, who was the director of operation for the Steelers later.
Yes.
And sports was a way of life. So I knew what I wanted to do after graduate school. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach, and the path opened up for me. I ended up going to Delaware for a lot of years, 22 years, much of it at Indian River High School, but also at Dover High School. And we had some great kids there that they put together a good reputation throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. Slam Dunk to the Beach was there. We did very well there. And then I matriculated to Florida. And I've been went from Springstead back over to the East Coast here, and enjoyed every bit of it.
Over to Jensen Beach.
Jensen Beach, right.
And how many years have you been at Treasure Coast now?
This will be my fourth.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
So, 11 years in Florida after retiring from Pennsylvania, or Delaware.
After retiring.
I got that roadmap straight.
Keep your ears straight.
Yeah.
And pick your background, my friend.
Mine's a little simpler. I'm from Pittsburgh. We're actually, Coach and I are from the same general area, and after we talked, we didn't realize, but you know, just few years separated us, but we used to work the same basketball camps.
Wow. Metro
Index Camp at California University of Pennsylvania, where I was a player and went to school there to be a teacher. But right out of high school, I always knew I wanted to coach and teach. My uncle across the street from me was an elementary school teacher in the Pittsburgh City League, city schools. And my father was the middle school, Catholic school coach in our town.
CYO League?
It's basically the CYO League. Yeah. And so I just knew I was going to merge those two together. Yeah. And one of my industrial arts teacher was very influential and put me in the direction. Carl Hughes and Alan Agamidi both put me in a position to go to school and major in shop, being the old shop teacher. But drafting was a passion, and it's something I enjoy doing. And I've been at Port St. Lucie High School now 29 years.
Wow. And you went to Indian River?
Yeah, a little stop with Indian River. You know, after my son was born, I didn't quite have the amount of time in those first couple years when he was an infant. So I gave up Port St. Lucie's job at the time 14 years ago. And Mike saw me, you know, and Max and I were friends. And Chris Max at Central is also from Pittsburgh area. And so we knew we could work together. So he asked me to join the staff and volunteer. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to step in and work with a Hall of Fame coach. And it worked out really well. And they offered me the job for 1 year. And I took it, won a conference title there at Indian River in 2010. But just the circumstances of staying there long term just was not going to be.
And not being at the school.
Right. I wasn't. I was always teaching at Port St. Lucie and driving back and forth, trying to do both positions, and that just took up too much time overall. And long term, I just knew that Port St. Lucie in high school was going to be best fit for me, and the opportunity opened back up.
Well, I remember when the 6 years I was at Port St. Lucie High, I loved every minute of it. And some of the greatest things is when you went to the Final Four. And I always remember the Dwyer game, or the regional finals, where we packed the gym. And that was back before Treasure Coast opened up. And our crowds, I remember when you used to play, when I went to Centennial as the athletic director, we were in the same district. And we had to play our district finals on Saturdays. You remember? And you would see, nobody wants to play Saturdays anymore. We packed the place.
Yeah.
I mean, we were actually shutting down the door 10, 15 minutes before game time started.
Yeah.
But that's great. One of the things that I kind of admired when I was an athletic director at Centennial is the way the basketball coaches really got together. I mean, in your district with Coach Chuck up at Vero and Max over at Central, and we never, ever had a problem, you know, and when you were coaching against, you know, Rick McCarty at Centennial and Fred, you guys always got together.
Yeah.
Now, coming from Miami, a little bit different down there. I mean, it's a little more, but you guys always worked together, and I always thought that and kind of admired that.
I don't know how they went about, but I think in most part, basketball coaches generally do respect each other a good bit, and we know. You know, we're all trying to teach our kids to play together, and it really has nothing to do with animosity towards each other or anything like that. So there's usually a common bond, friendship that most of us coaches usually have. I know Coach and I, when we first met, you know, it was just there's nothing between us. You know, we're just old coaches from the Western PA area that just, you know, love the game, love the sport. So I think basketball coaches in general really seem to get along.
Yeah, we compete hard during the game, but you know, it's like a fraternity outside the game. And when Chuck retired or Tommy over at South Fork retired, we all got together, celebrated their retirements. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Over the years, each sport has changed. I know with baseball, I was talking with Coach before the show about, you know, the relief pitchers are the biggest part of the game right now.
Right.
I would say in football, the overriding factor for football right now is safety. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
In basketball, I think what has changed is that there's no such thing as a mid-range jump shot, right? The assists, I mean, in high school, you know, you can count your assists on a finger. You know, everything's I'm going to do a three-pointer, I'm going to do a one-on-one. Do you guys, how do you think that has changed over the years?
You want to take on that first? Go ahead.
Now we have the dribble drive offense, and you know, there is a philosophy of the three-point or racket, you know, to the rim. I think the good coaches like that I look at, Beeline, Coach, okay, that have systems. They still run the continuity offense. They teach their guards to use their dribble to enter the ball, relocate. But eventually, I think you have to know the concepts that are vogue today as well.
And then that comes from the pros. That comes from college. Is the trickle-down effect?
But well, you know, somebody starts an idea. Memphis State with Calipari popularized it, and you know, then what we do is if we adjust and we adapt, we take what we have and then we adapt it. Like I had trouble with it because I couldn't figure out the continuity of it.
Right.
So what I try to do is make it so it was a continuity offense. Then I could buy into it because I don't really like to just let them go. You know what I mean?
No, 'cause I mean, when you're trying to win championships like you have over the years, you know that it comes down to late game situations. You have to have the team, the players need to know where the ball needs to go, who it needs to go to, and why, you know, where on the floor. So you can't just like let them play and go, okay, well, we have more athletes, and over time they'll figure it out. You want to teach every aspect of the game. So by just letting them go, you have to control when, where, why they make those decisions. Right. So it's an ebb and flow. We all have a base system that we teach out of, and then based on the talent that the players bring to you, then you mold what their talent is to teaching a principle of the game, and then you let them go, and then you guide their decision making. And it's a long process. People don't believe that basketball players are, some people think that you just get to do whatever they want, and then the coaches are just out there yelling. But they don't realize that everything, every jab, every fake, every little twist is taught by all of us that try to get toward the end of the year.
Well, even if you look at the best pro teams, or you take Golden State, for example, with all that talent, you could see how well coached they are.
Right.
Because everybody's buying into their system.
Right.
But I'm glad you guys brought that up, because this comes into my next topic, and I'm kind of passionate on this, and I guess I've been fighting a losing battle over the years. When Dr. Deering was the executive director up at the FHSAA, who just retired, I was pushing him for years. We have to have mandatory coaching classes that people have to improve every year. Both of you as teachers, every year you're going to classes within the county required by state. You just had a professional development day.
Right.
Hopefully that'll get you better in your profession as a teacher. But as a coach, I think we get stagnant. Now, when I don't mean classes, I don't mean somebody getting up there in the front of the room and lecturing you. I mean just what you two guys did right now. Getting in a room with the basketball coaches and talking to each other. What can you do? Football coaches do this for years. You know, they always go to things, but then they're, well, I want to make sure you're not going to steal this from me. But you bring in somebody. I was able to talk at a FHSA seminar this year, and I was talking to athletic directors. And I said, do you ever ask your coaches, what do they do to improve themselves?
Right.
You know, right? Because if you're not going to improve yourself, you're going to beat them, because you're going to improve yourself, okay?
Right.
Times have changed. And I told Coach Kelly the story when we were outside, when I was helping coaching baseball over at Martin County, and I've been coaching baseball, Pick, you know this, for 40 years.
Right.
I had a young man say 2 words to me that I never got said to me in my life. And I don't know, I was ready to just blow up. I'm teaching a drill, and I'm showing him this, and he says, Coach, don't worry about it. I know. Nobody ever said to me, I know. So this bothered me, and then I realized times have changed. We have to go back and learn things. So I thought about it. So the next day, we're doing the same thing. He did the same thing. I stopped practice. I brought everybody over. Now that you know, I want you to explain it to everybody. Because now, again, that's something that we change in a coaching thing. But I would love to see classes. Now, I know you can take these online classes that anybody can. Right. And you're awake for 10 minutes and it's on for a half hour. I'd love to see mandatory classes where you guys had to go and they talk about coaching principles. What do you do that's successful? What do you do that's successful? What do you do that's not successful? How do you guys feel about that?
Well, there's coaching clinics. We attend. I try to go to a couple a year now that I'm back in. Yeah. You go and you pick some ideas up off coaches. I think the internet generation has kind of changed things up a little bit.
Why is that?
Only because you can get access to top coaches in the country who have done their clinics or do their demonstrations at other venues that are filmed, and then they're put on. Now, you're not in a situation to ask a lot of questions, and that is important if you feel to. But Coach and I, well, I know he's a clinician guy. He loves to listen to other coaches, and we've talked stuff together with ourselves. And you can ask some questions back and forth. I went to the FHSAA clinic just a couple weeks ago, and I was a little disappointed that how small of a crowd it was. But I think it's because most of the game has changed a little bit, and I think it's going to change back with the current situation that is going on nationally with the shoe companies and all the lawsuits. But some coaches feel like they can just see things on TV and just try to repeat it, and they don't understand it. I think the younger coaches, I don't know if they like sitting around with older coaches and talk. And I know when I was younger, I used to love it. Do 5-star camps and travel all over the place in the summer, going out to California and going to Kentucky and going to Virginia and going back to Pittsburgh to sit with coaches and listen and learn what they do. I think coaches today are just more interested in finding a player that makes them look like a good coach rather than be a coach and turn a player, someone that no one knows
In
about.
Delaware,
into
we
a
had the
player.
high school coaches put on the clinics, which was
See, I
real-
love that.
That was nice.
I
you
love
know,
that,
And,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like some of the things that I've learned have come from high school coaches like
Sure.
Lee Sibley and St. Mark's High School in Delaware, or Bobby Hurley and St. Anthony's.
Right.
So we're resources that sometimes get overlooked.
Yeah.
And that would be a great thing to do, like for the FHSAA to have people from different regions
Absolutely.
rotate it, have a different coach talk about it. I think it would be excellent, and I would go to it for sure.
Yeah.
And then, that's something, now that I'm kind of talking to them a little bit, kind of pushing them. And also in your county, years ago we used to have, remember, John, a whole day for coaches in service.
Yes,
And
right.
that got cut out. And part of it was safety, part of it was rules. But then for an hour, let's have all the basketball coaches in one room. Let's have all the football coaches in one room. And bring, who you bring in? You bring in the officials.
Sure.
And you start talking. What are you going to emphasize this year? What are you
I
going to
think
do?
that's great, too.
It's something if you could push that, because officials, you need to know how to approach them.
Absolutely.
And what are they going to emphasize? Baseball, they're switching all the time. But that's something I think we need, because, again, your greatest resource sitting right next to you right now.
Oh, no doubt.
But we
Likewise.
don't do that. And I always try to tell the FHSA, you're handing these coaches all these rules. That's the athletic director's job, okay? How are they going to get better? How are you going to get better at coach? And I know if I went to one of these clinics, I wanted to be a thief. I wanted to steal something from somebody.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to put it in my back pocket. That's the drill that you did. Now, how did you do that drill again? And, I'm writing this down. And if I can improve, and I would go back. I remember when I was down in Miami Pace, I told my coach, what, they're doing this drill over at American High School. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it too.
Right.
And because you're a teacher, both of you guys are teachers in the classroom. And when you're coaching, you're a teacher too,
Right.
And you're a learner.
You're a
always
learner.
trying
That's
to
a great
eliminate
point, Coach.
the
That's a great
mistakes that
point.
you make so that you give your kids a chance at winning.
Well, one thing about the FHSA clinic we just went to I thought was really unique was a young NBA coach from Orlando Magic who had been a number of years with the San Antonio Spurs. He came to the clinic, and his little overhead projecting thing just didn't go. He goes, coaches, he was young, might be early 40s, and he said, really, I don't have anything to give you. He pulled up a chair, sat down. He goes, I'm going to ask you guys questions.
Exactly.
So as an NBA guy who had been with the Spurs for so long and was actually working with the Magic, he was looking for ideas from coaches.
Yes.
And then there was actually a few come over from the girls' side, and then all of us sat around. There was only about 15 or 20 of us, and we all just gave him our input on how we build the team, because he was trying to come up with things, even though the culture at San Antonio was so great. He was trying to build a culture at Orlando Magic, and their players are so young that he was actually reaching out to the high school coaches who do things that build teams. So I thought that was really unique. But those are the things that you don't learn unless you go.
And you watch film, you learn
Yes.
too.
And you want to learn.
Pick up ideas.
That's the
exactly.
big thing. I think, John, you were at one of the last in-services we did, and I remember talking, and, I remember
Why
Dan give us
why
that,
do you coach? I think
why
it
do
was
you
your thing.
coach, or why are you coaching this? And people like you and Roger are listening, and then you look on the side, some people are not listening, you know? And a good friend of both of ours, named Ed Kirshner, and I probably learned more about coaching in general, not basketball, which he was the best.
Yeah.
Just in general, when he, I had a pretty good team at Port St. Lucie High in baseball, and Ed would come over and whisper a few things in my ear, not about baseball, but about coaching in general, how to approach a big game. Boy, that stuck with me for years, and I always remember that. And you learn from people. When you reflect back, and I guess I got a little chance to reflect back now that I'm a little bit retired or semi-retired. One of the things, and I'll throw this out at you guys, and you can give me your own opinions about this. One of the things that when I retired, I look back, I wish I would have done better, is to reach out and touch some of the kids that didn't play that much. Yeah. When I was, fortunate enough to get inducted into the Florida Hall of Fame, I go up there and I went up with Candy, and we're sitting at a table, and all of a sudden, Dr. Deering put this big box of emails. And I'm looking at this, and it's all from my former players that they have reached out to. And I'm waiting. Geez, I cut this kid. This kid never played. And I'm saying to myself, geez, what can I do more? You know, and I said to myself, all of a sudden I felt bad.
Right.
Because,
I know what you mean.
geez, I'm up 10 runs. What's the difference between winning by 10 and winning by 7?
Sure.
You guys are up 30, you know. So, you know, my big thing is when I talk to the ADs this year, I said, talk to your coaches and tell them every day at practice, pick out a kid. It doesn't have to be your best player. Because I know you two, and I probably was like you too. My best player, I'm the hardest on.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
am the absolute hardest on my.
Yeah.
Reach out to somebody who's your last player or near the end. And at the end of each practice, hey, come here. Whether he did a good job or not, boy, you really worked hard today. You made that kid's day, you know? How do you guys feel about something like that?
I think, like, if you evaluate them all, tell them their strengths, their weaknesses, and give them a recommendation on how to improve, they value that.
Right.
And then if they seek feedback from you and you give it to them, and if you give it unsolicited, they love that too.
Yes, unsolicited is a great word. That's a great word.
And the thing is, that and you give them affirmation. We all want affirmation. We all need affirmation. So that's part of our job is to build their self-esteem through giving them affirmation. But it's also, look, you know, this is a road where you could actually be a difference maker, and then connect with their pathway forward. You know, write a recommendation. You know, speak it from the heart. I think they know if you're genuine and how you're dealing with them, and that's what we strive to do.
I try to put some of those guys that maybe not play a little bit into leadership roles, whether it's they run the calisthenics before practice, or they call out our dynamic workout, because sometimes they're always the ones that want to try to impress. And if they're a little on the older side, hopefully a junior or senior, we try to put them in spots where if we're doing things that they collect as a team have to turn in, they're the ones that go get it. Where they're the ones that send messages out. I have them maybe text out, those kind of things where they're in leadership roles. And I do a couple speeches, and I even do it with my classroom. Sometimes the caboose could be more important or just as important as the engine. You know, you have a driving force where the engine's always looking forward where they're going, but the caboose is the one making sure everybody else stays in line to be part of the team. So if you work from behind with leadership, you got everybody going in the right direction. Because if the one guy on your team is at the end of the bench is not playing, he can actually negative affect. If you have 12 men, he affects the 11th, he affects the 10th, and it gets down to the 7th. And then the 8th guy who plays some and may not play others, the 12th man is the guy that lifts that 8th man up. He's the guy that lifts the 6th man up. Say, no, when you get in there, you got to play harder. You owe it to all of us. So you try to use the 12th man as the guy who does a few leadership things throughout the year, and it kind of helps everybody bond, because they realize that the engine, the guy who's running the team, actually needs the 12th man to make it all go.
And you never know when you're going to need that caboose to be the engine.
Sure.
You know, somebody goes down with an injury.
When I was a freshman at Duquesne, I played for Al Bailey, and he told us, he said, there's two people different than everybody. He had just come back from playing LSU, so one of them was Pete Maravich, and the other one was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he said, the rest of you, it's gonna shake out according to how hard you play and how bad you want it. So I think I had a kid come up to me, it was my third team center at Dover, and he said, what do I got to do to play here? I said, look, this guy's good on offense. This guy's strong on the boards. You got to be the greatest defensive center I could have. He was my starter by the end of the year. So, I mean, it's just a matter of getting them to see a pathway for them, too, and they can actually break through.
And you never know who's going to be your starter. And John, you at PSL when I was there, and Rick Ankiel was there. When Rick was a freshman, and then all of a sudden, boom, he turned out to be the best player in the nation. You know, and he developed into that. He just didn't walk in there because he worked harder than everybody. But I like that idea when you give the players that are not playing a lot of responsibilities. I mean, I would always try to, you know, when I worked with Tony Malizia, we tried to take our two guys that were probably not going to play the most, and we had scrimmage games. Now you're the managers. you're coaching third base.
Sure.
The guys that were wise guys, I told them go find the key to the batter's box, which they're still looking for, you know.
Right.
But you know, it's just it has changed. I would love to see these classes in. I would love to see the county do something, you know, or you guys organize something where you have all your basketball coaches and your officials and all your football coaches and and boy, you'll come out of that. Another thing is, well, I'm on this subject. I'm on a little soapbox here. We are just promoting football, and probably as much as I love football, as much as I love high school football, I just think the other sports, and I'm talking as a former athletic director, get left out. You know, I know this is the way in Florida. Florida is football, but the coverage that they give to football compared to the other sports, and I'm talking about the girls' sports too.
Oh,
you know,
you don't have to tell me about it.
You know, yeah, you know, Roger had a team that went to the state championship a
Right.
few years ago at Treasure Coast, and it's nothing compared to a football team that goes
Right.
1-9.
Right.
You know, you got to give the other sports. And John, when we were back, if we go back 15 years before there was a Treasure Coast, when we played, was our gyms packed?
Oh, it was busy. It's kind of, it's hard to describe why they're not as packed, but there was a bigger following there. From what, you know, you go back to the old days, you hear stories of when it was just Central and Westwood, you know, how busy and packed it was before Port St. Lucie was around. So
what can we do to promote basketball? I'm just talking about basketball here. What can you do to promote basketball in this area a little bit more?
I think you have to get your student body energized into the games, you know, reach out to them. Obviously, if they just did something simply like have a top 10 for basketball, like the way they have a top 10 for football, or they rate the teams and put it in the paper or something like that, they develop more interest, and kids are looking at the paper more often and things like that. I think that the press does okay, but I think that they could probably write up the competition for the district within the district
more often. More. It is a strange situation. We have more and more people coming to St. Lucie County, but there's less and less coverage. So it's kind of, I don't know whether, you know, people.
There's a couple simple things they could do though, in the newspaper that would help.
It takes 2 days to get a golf, you know, being the golf coach at St. Lucie High School. It takes 2 days to get it in the paper when you're called in. So there's a lot on their end, and I know the society is going more to the internet type of coverage, but you know, people were spread out thinner and thinner and thinner into where they get their information. So you know, it does start at our student bodies. I think that's a big key, is getting the students more involved, because then that trickles to the parents, and then the parents' friends, and then the community. And we have such a transient situation in St. Lucie County where so many people are moving in and moving out, that there's not a bought into the long-term tradition of what the communities provide, because they're coming in late and they might leave early, so there's not a long-term. But we have to somehow grasp them while they're in our 4 years of high school that they have. We have to do a little better job of communicating with the student body, getting our kids involved.
Well, we finished our first half real quick, so we're going to say goodbye for this edition of Hey Coach, and we're going to bring these gentlemen back for our second edition.